Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to this final session on day one of IRS 10, in which we're going to be talking to an illustrious panel of guests about how we can transform stations into smart multimodal hubs for transport. This has been sponsored by SmartFlows, and they will be giving the opening presentation in the form of Marie Faucon, who is the marketing manager at SmartFlow. The most important thing about this particular session is that it doesn't matter what you do in the railway sector, at some point in your career, you will either be the manager of or a user of a railway station, because anybody who uses the trains, it is the station where the first point of entry and the point at which you leave the railway system. So it's very important, in fact, that stations are something which is user-friendly and a pleasing experience. And the panelists are going to help us through responding to some of those points. So Marie has got a background in retail and customer experience with a focus on transit places. She has worked very closely in developing food concepts in railway stations and at airports as well, all of which, of course, have got multiple flows of people through them. And she now promotes passenger flow data as enablers for rational decision making. Marie, I'm going to hand over to you. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Simon. Thank you. We are at SmartFlows very happy to be able to discuss with you on the smart station hubs for tomorrow. And actually, I will show you what can be done right now already in terms of smart stations. So I will discuss with you about passenger flow monitoring and crowd management for smart stations. I hope you can hear me well. Yes, I think so. All right. So SmartFlows is a system that transforms raw undervalued data, such as Wi-Fi, beacon, station maps, train schedule, retail transactions, etc., into actionable data, in insight, basically, that operators can use to make the best decisions for their station and their station network. Our clients use our data to fulfill 4 types of objectives. Well, station operators plan their resources more effectively while distributing and managing the flow of people more efficiently across the space. Passengers are empowered with real-time data on their journey so that they are in control and they are likely, for example, to postpone their trip to a quieter time if there are too many people in the station. Retail and marketing teams dig in the behaviors of each type of passengers to understand the spending habits so that the best choices are made in terms of shopping areas to improve service and maximize rent for the stations themselves. And eventually, station managers monitor densities all over the station to ensure the best health and security conditions. SmartFlows has been in business for the past 10 years, and its expertise focuses on transit places like airports and train stations, among which the references that you can see on the slide right now. The software is in use in various airports across the world under long-term contracts, and in Gare et Connexion, which is the French operator of stations here in France. I would like to dig in the Gare et Connexion use case with you today. SmartFlows has been working for Gare et Connexion since 2016 and is now under a 5-year contract that started in 2019. The software leverages various raw data from Gare et Connexion, including Wi-Fi, on the 260 biggest stations in France, and it transforms this data into smart insights so that 700 operatives among SNCF global organization can make smarter decisions. The data is available through SmartFlow's web application that I will show you right now. One of the first objectives of Gare Connexion when starting the project was to support the daily life in station, which is, as you know, hectic, since no day happens without a passenger flow issue, whether it is a train being late, a passenger incident, an issue with another station, in another station that causes delays in the station I'm managing right now. It all threatens the operations and even the security of the station. So in this picture that you can see here, the station operators monitors the real time, the live flow in the station in general, and in every area of the station. The flow is quantified, it is measured, so that the operators take actions with the best data in their hands. And of course, real time can be assessed as already too late in a way, because in real time, the issue has already happened. While the best opportunity is when you can plan, you can anticipate the situation. This is why the traffic is also forecasted, as you can see here with the blue line that finishes until the end of the day. So you can predict what is going to happen throughout your station in terms of traffic. Looking backwards at what has happened in the past, at the previous situation, is also absolutely key to debrief, to analyze, and to amend the plan for next time. This is the purpose of this feature, which area per area, day per day, or month per month, provides historical data of traffic and dwell time. It also shows the distribution on the lower part of the screen. It shows distribution of passengers between departing, arriving, transferring, and also non-travelers. So that, for example, one can identify the behaviors of those non-travelers that come to the station to shop, to eat, or just to kiss and fly. This data supports planning for a better design by adapting the distribution of flows in the station. And for example, in these Corona times that we're living at the moment, one might want to close some accesses or make them just one way, or even shut some areas of the station that are underused so that they can save some operating costs. I was saying earlier that real time is already too late in a way, and that the best way was to be able to plan and to anticipate a situation. Having a view at the station's network, so the station's network standpoint, gives the opportunity to anticipate issues, especially, for example, in mass transit, where the station operator do not always know the flow of arriving passenger in their station, so that they would have to put up with that flow. Actually, with this network standpoint, when you identify that there are density in some stations, here, for example, in the Southwest station, especially when it's for departing population, then one can anticipate that this issue will hit the station further along the route. So actions like adjusting the departure time, the arrival time, or obviously the route time in between can be taken to ease the flow further along the route. SmartFlow's data supports the production of specific insights that answer a specific question. Here is an example when a major electrical incident happened in Paris-Montparnasse, which is one of the biggest stations here in Paris, preventing at the time any train from arriving and leaving the station for a few hours. Passengers had to be reorientated towards Paris-Austerlitz station, which is a smaller station here in Paris. So on the left-hand side of the screen, you can see the traffic at Gare d'Austerlitz in orange that increases very highly compared to what would be expected on a classic Thursday, which is the violet line. And on the right-hand side, you can measure the impact on the network. You can see the total, again in orange, you can see the total time passengers needed to get to Tours, to Poitiers, to La Rochelle, to Bordeaux, to Toulouse, which is obviously much longer than on classic days, which is the time in violet, because it takes into consideration the time they needed to get from Montparnasse to Austerlitz, and then the longer route that they took from Austerlitz to their final destination. So this insight, for example, was used by SNCF top management to measure the impact of the incident, and of course to improve the contingency plan in case another event like this one might appear in the future. Since May 2020, SmartFlow's software suites includes a social distancing feature that is meant for health and security purposes. This feature was massively used by SNCF COVID-19 crisis room to manage the safe return of passengers in the station after the end of the first lockdown here in France, and to ensure social distancing ever since. Station operators needed to measure the occupancy in real time to quantify the density issues. Of course, operational staff will always say that they know, they feel, they see what's happening, but actually having a proper objectivity, quantified objectivity, allowed the best decision. So here the passenger densities is measured in each area of the station in real time, on each platform, in the sanitary areas, etc. And the density is also forecasted for the next 30 minutes so that actions can be taken to both answer to crowds and avoid future crowds. Looking at historical data, there is also the need to debrief situation with an incident tracking and a measurement tool. It's about basically, you can't manage what you can't measure. So station management can then adjust signage, alter circulation, for example. And eventually, Gare Connexion management and the crisis room wanted passengers to know that their health and security was in good hands, so that the passengers could trust that going back to stations and travel again was safe. So SNCF as a whole organization communicated massively about the use of the system to reassure passengers that social distancing was applied. And so here on the left-hand side, you will be able to reach, if you get the presentation on the handouts, to reach an extract of a TV report, which was done on May 17th on TF1, which is the first channel here in France. To sum up, SmartFlow's software suite provides live and historical data, as well as passenger flow forecasts. Our clients use the data to support the daily life of operational staff in the station, basing their decision on quantified real-time data. Forecasting resources is also key, because of course it saves budget as much as it prevents crowds from happening. On the long term, SmartFlow's data supports planning for better design by adapting the distribution of flows over the station. And the data also increases revenues by providing the best retail and services offer to each type of passengers. Like commuters have different needs from family traveling on summer holidays, obviously. And so this better match between the retail that is offered and the type of passengers that are in the station improves the passenger experience, at the same time as it increases the revenues of the station. And the fifth point eventually is about sharing the data with the passengers so that they feel empowered, and it gives them the best information on their journey, so that they can adapt. A passenger might prefer a route that is not the shortest, but that is less crowded in the station that we will depart from, for example. How does it work? Well, SmartFlows transforms location data, such as Wi-Fi, beacon, camera data, into entry to exit journeys throughout the station and the network, with the accuracy of an exhaustive counting system. The solution automatically sorts out passengers between departure, arrival, transit, and non-travelers, national, regional, international passengers. And it also associates, it matches the path with the train, the destination, the carrier that the passenger went on. And eventually it provides a network view all over the stations that have location data and that are included in the software configuration. SmartFlows is a plug-and-play solution that has a proven track record of 10 years with strong references, among which Gare Connexion, which is again a 260 stations that are configured here in France. So choosing SmartFlows, you access a ready-to-use web application that provides the needed information at the right time to all users among the organization very quickly and after a very simple configuration. It obviously monitors the path from end to end and all over the network. The solution is compliant with the strictest international privacy regulation, including the most recent GDPR. And the solution has its own 3 times patented location engine that uses trilateration methods that guarantees that there is an excellent correlation of the data that is provided by the software to reality. So to conclude, we experience that all major station networks have undervalued location data. Whether it is Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, camera, all this already exists. And this data has a very high value. All you need is the right tool to transform it into actionable passenger flow data so that you have basically the power to transform that gold mine into actual jewels that you can use to transform your station into smart hubs. Thank you very much.
So Marie, thank you, merci beaucoup. Thank you very much indeed for that for that insight, and very interesting indeed. I mean, the concept that you can't manage what you can't measure is resonates very well, and it is as an old safety professional. I know exactly what you mean about being able to measure things in order to be able to manage them, and that's super important. And we'll come back, I think, if we may, during the discussion later on about some of the issues that you mentioned, in particular.
With pleasure.
The use of the tool, particularly in this current crise sanitaire, as they say,
Yes.
in the current pandemic. I'd like to explore that with you as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, in thanking Marie once again, I'd like to move us on, if I may, to our next speaker and introduce you to Filippo Innocenti, who is, as the name suggests, an Italian and has been working with Zaha Hadid architects for about almost the last 20 years, in fact.
Yes,
it won't be long before your 20th anniversary there. And just to say that Filippo has been working with them on a number of relevant infrastructure projects, including the Afragola station in Napoli and also the Mumbai International Airport, So with your design mind or design hat on, Filippo, take us through how you perceive this whole concept of converting or transforming stations into multimodal transport hubs. The floor's yours. Oh yes, I should say I do apologise, and thank you very much, Sajani, for reminding me. There is a poll before this. I even wrote it down. It's just I can't read my own writing. So the question that Filippo would like to know, please, ladies and gentlemen, is how would you improve your experience when travelling? Would you do that by minimising the time spent in the station? Would you do that by enjoying cultural and socialising events? Or would you do that by taking advantage of the integration of retail and F&B? What does F&B stand for, Filippo?
Food and beverage.
Ah, food and beverage. Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay,
excellent.
This is pretty much the key of the design of stations nowadays, right? Because now that we can rely on a more efficient engineering system, then we can really focus on the passenger experience and how to integrate these transit hubs with the external programs. I think is the key for the design in the next year.
So let's give people the chance. So the poll has closed, and in fact, of those that have responded, by far and away, the overwhelming response is to minimise the time spent in the station. That's probably because people perceive stations as being drafty and unattractive. But this is what you're now going to share with us with your design hat on. Okay, the floor's yours.
Thank you so much. So I'm Filippo Innocenti. I'm director at Zaha Hadid Architects. Next one, please. We are an architectural firm based in London of about 450 staff coming from 55 different nations. Next one. And we had the opportunity of challenging ourselves with different possible cultural environment and many different functional briefs across the world. We have 9 projects completed in the last 12 months, but about 50 under development at the moment. Next one. We started mainly into the cultural field with a number of projects well renowned for contemporary art museum, like the one in Rome, or the Guangzhou Opera House in China. And this has gave us the opportunity of building up our experience with the public space. And I believe the integration of public space with the infrastructure is nowadays the key of a successful design. So with our building, the previous one, we had an option of helping communities to shape and enhance their local identity, up to the point that we've been rewarded seeing our projects ending up on the mail stamps or even the currency banknotes. Next one. Thanks. And we've lived with this current trend on transforming stations and transit hub into something else, more importantly, places of attraction and destination on themselves, regardless to the need of the passengers to travel. Next one. And next one, please. Our approach to design is strictly based on mathematical rules. If we want the shape of the building, despite being as exciting as possible, being the result of simple parameter. Next one. In this case, for the design of the Beijing 45 million passengers terminal of Dashing, the 2 parameters shaping the building are the extension of the external perimeters in order to have the maximum number of contact gates possible, and on the same time, the reduction of the traveling distance from one single gate to the center of the airport. Next one. We are inspired by nature, and we are struck not by the form, but more by the process of formation of the shape. Next one. So we want our building to convey the message that the form is the result of an organization of coherent forces, like the case in these images of our station for the Riyadh metro, and in particular the station for the financial district, which is pretty much based on a contemporary transposition of ancient vernacular system of sustainable design and sustainable principle, in particular for the protection from the solar energy and maximization of the natural light. Another point that we like to hit with every project in infrastructure is how the infrastructure is actually connected to the architecture in the most natural and elegant way possible. Next one, please. So what are the principles that we can use in the design of the contemporary transit hubs? First one, I would say, the great opportunity of making the stations as a continuation of the public space, of the urban condition outside. Bring the force and the lively space of the city into the stations, and make use, and make use of the architectural shape as a mean of guiding the people through the station to their destination. So in particular, for underground spaces, another aspect which I think is keen is providing an identity to the stations. And we can reach this, for instance, by opening windows and letting the external landmarks of the city being visually connected with interiors, so that people can find themselves at ease in every station and recognize that as a unique place. This project is for the high-speed train station in Naples, one of our first attempts of challenging the brief of a transit hub. In this case, we were focused in particular on how to overcome the barrier of the railway track with the station that we designed as a bridge from one side to the other. Next one. Thanks. And it was also one kind of pioneeristic project into the sustainability, which is nowadays the most important aspect of our design program. In this case, by means of distributing a number of solar and PV panels and orienting the building in such a way that could take the maximum advantage of bioclimatic principles, minimizing the exposure to the sun and maximizing the intake of natural light. Next one. The two entrances of the building, the next one, are gathering the passengers, and next one, they are guiding them naturally, thanks to natural wayfinding, towards the center of the station, the passenger center, which is located right on top of the railway track, in the position that is ideal to descend to the platform, but on the same time gives an opportunity to open up a public plaza, a square where people have a chance to socialize and leave the station as better as they can. The next one. In another project that we've done on the Alps in Austria, in Innsbruck, we were connecting the center of the city with the ski fields on the mountains, and this was a beautiful opportunity, next one, to develop a family of 5 different stations, all based on the same DNA functional program, but declined in 5 different forms according to the specific condition of the site, which is a beautiful way of making these stations unique on their own, but at the same time give the necessary corporate identity to the overall line. Next one, please. For these other stations that we are building in Norway, in Oslo, next one, we are relying on a much minimal architectural feature, which is based on the simple shape of the gallery of the platform that goes from being round to rectangular on the other side. Next one. And so we treated this architectural space as an opportunity of playing with artificial lights, replicating the exterior condition of daylight. Next one. And next one, please. Same line, a different station. This in this other case is completely different and is played on the opportunity of being integrated within a park, and therefore replicating a sort of an artificial landscape and integrating the station within the morphology of the park outside. Next one. This is our high-speed train station in Tallinn for the rail. Here again, another investigation on how to make use of the station to overcome the barrier of the railway, creating a bridge on top and an underpass for social and the better public activity of the people connecting the city. The next one. Finally, this is our attempt for network rail of coming with a system of simple elements that are combinable together in order to create a number of different solutions for small and medium-sized stations across the territory. The next one. The idea here is to make use of a simple catalog of high technology smart construction systems that are based on the most sustainable materials, and create a system that can be combined together in the most efficient way to create a number of possible configurations of different stations for rural, semi-rural, or urban environment. Thank you. Yeah.
I'm coming. Let's get the buttons clicked in the right order. So, Filippo, thank you very much indeed. A very interesting overview of some of the and some glorious photographs, I have to say, of some of the projects that you've been working on. Some of which I recognise from my dim and distant past. Excellent. Right. What I'd like to do, obviously, is we'll pick up on all of the comments and all of the questions, and just to remind everybody out there in the audience that if you have questions that you would like to ask any of the panelists, please do put them into the Q&A section on the of the web platform. And so that we will be able to respond to those a little later on. Right, I'd like to move us on, if I may, to our thank you, Filippo. I'd like to move us on now to our last presenter, who's going to present us with a perspective on all of this, and this is Kurt Hulgren, who is here to represent the end user, the customer. Because if we're going to be transforming the station into a hub, a multimodal hub, it probably is quite useful to be able to get the voice of the people that are going to use it. And this is what the European Passenger Federation are set up to achieve. Kurt is the former General Secretary of the Swedish Passengers Federation and was previously Station Development Manager at SJ, the Swedish Railway Company. And he is also a member of the prestigious Watford Group, or Watford Conference, and also, I should say, yes, of course, of the Watford Group as well. Kurt, I will leave you to say a little more about your perspective on these things, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Nice to participate, and I want to give the individual's perspective, and the development of sustainable and smart stations is something quite important for all the society. So the stations are actually part of the a very important and crucial factor to all passengers. The slides, yes, that's one. European Passenger Federation has been working for 20 years, and it represents 38 member organizations in 21 countries, from Spain and Greece and Italy in the south, to Norway, Sweden and Finland in the north, from Ireland to Russia. So we are working with an individual perspective from different corners. Going by train is, of course, not a difficult thing once you are in the train, but often the stations are a sort of something to manage before going to the train. If there are some problems, they normally occur in the stations. A passenger or a user has to combine different travel links or different ticketing, and they have to deal with the orientation problems in the station. And as a matter of fact, the public transport system is a chain of changes. There is a change between trains and trams and metros and buses. And this change system is crucial for the choice of transport. And we have to find out a way of making the use of stations very supple and not being so confusing as it might be many times. Going in a car from one place to another is easy, but going by public transport means changing once or twice or even more times. And in addition, the luggage has to be handled. On the other hand, there is the comfort and the space for your legs and option to walk around while traveling. So the station functioning is very important. And the digital information to the passenger is very useful. And most passengers have a very good use of all the new means that are available for the train use. But, oh, what happened to the picture? Could I have the, well, yes. We have found that not all passengers are able to use those digital measures, which are very practical for all those who really use them. But not everybody has a computer at hand all time while traveling. Not everybody even has a mobile phone. Many have a mobile phone they only use for making phone calls. And so all persons, after all, have to handle the real world. And that is how to be improved in different ways. Sign system and loudspeakers and service staff seem to be more important than a lot of expectation has indicated. Orientation is basic, and even the need of printed paper maps should not be forgotten, although many persons can see a map in a mobile phone, although it is very small. You can handle that, but a paper map is something easier to a lot of people. And also the cash system is a form of digital paying. It's very efficient with all the cards to use, but cashless methods need also alternatives. And what's very interesting that London, Transport for London, just decided not to go cashless. What I want to say is that there is not so little group that really has so really needs the extra measures. If we were in the sustainable society will have to get more people using public transport, it must be easier, and the previous car users have to find it very easy. The previous air users find new qualities, and persons who used to go on charter trips will find also that there are quite interesting places to visit in their own country or in the next country. So the stations have to be smart and prove they are easy and not confusing. There are a lot of passenger categories, of course. Some people are very experienced, like business persons, but private persons of different kinds, families and groups, tourists from next region or from abroad, elderly people, they all have different points of view. And one of the main things in the new smart station is that all the companies, they have to realize that they have more to gain from cooperation than from competition. Of course, they should compete, but there is also a factor, cooperation, which is favorable for the attractivity for the users of the public transport system. For instance, buses and trains are not only competitors, they are also supporting each other in the combination. And multimodal stations, offering service with trains, perhaps different companies, and buses and different companies, even both regional buses and also long-distance buses. They can make good alternatives and make the alternatives more attractive altogether. One of the characteristics that is quite important is, of course, this the easy way to find one's goal. Short walking way, straight, and preferably sheltered. This connection between train and tram and buses should be obvious and easy to find. For instance, a person arriving in a station should have easy to know whether the station square is to the right or to the left, coming down from the tracks. So such things can be quite confusing, and this has not to do with digitalization, but by science. This combination of service from different companies, between different train companies and bus companies and local public transport has to be managed by a company which is interested in the service factor of the station. And in some countries, this has been quite well solved. For instance, the Deutsche Bahn, Stationen und Service, or the SNCF, Gare Connexion. And in Great Britain, the Network Rail, in some stations managing on their own, but in some stations, the biggest train operator manages the station from the passenger's point of view. And that's very important. In Denmark, the DSB manages all stations, even where other operators run the trains. This is an example of a station in Sweden where we had a big project developing 1/3 of the main stations to combined multimodal stations, where we had negotiations with all the towns and convinced them to move the bus terminal to the station. And this is an example of Trollhättan in Sweden. It's not that big always, but for the passenger it's very important not to have to cross the town between the bus and the train. Then you take the car. So what is necessary is also that the information system has to include all the different companies, not only the main, or perhaps state-owned company, but also the regional train systems. And departing buses have to be informed at the same place, perhaps not in the same screen, but on the same spot. And one important thing is that the staff in the station should be a common staff, interested or knowing well all about the different train and bus companies. Because if everybody of those companies have their own, and you ask somebody, the situation will be that you always ask the wrong person and you don't get the answer. The common staff is quite important. This is an example of a station with a new crossover bridge and the bus terminal to the left, and a quite big parking area on the far side from the south, from the town. And what is interesting is also that your orientation as a passenger is much easier if you cross over the tracks on a bridge than if you go in a tunnel. You always get confused when you go in a tunnel somewhere. There is a special group of passengers that often is regarded as a bit difficult, but I would say that that's the wrong perception. Persons with reduced mobility, they are not seeing well, hearing well, not walking well, or they have orientation problems. But on the other hand, they are defining quality levels. What is necessary to some is favorable to most others. And as the SJ CEO a few years ago, Stig Larsson, said, we shouldn't separately calculate the measures for adaptation for PRMs, building self-opening doors or ramps or lifts and so on. We should calculate this as a quality increase, not as an extra cost. And as a matter of fact, I am still an expert in the EU DigiMove PRM advisory body that is making new next generation of the regulation for PRM. This is a booklet printed about this with extra measures for PRM that are very favorable to all passengers. Well, when building this new station, combining the bus station and the train station, it's important that the passenger or the train user is the main character. It should not be somebody who is buying things in the shops, because with too much shops, you get easily confused. The service is very practical for the travelers as well, but the traveler must remain the leading personality in planning this multimodal station. And another topic creating the smart multimodal station is that it should be visible very easily from the town. I will give you two examples. One is the Borås station in Sweden, a regional center, but with a bus terminal. You can't miss that this is the station. It's written on it. On the other hand, we have this picture. This is Montreal. It looks like the Queen Elizabeth Hotel. It's written on it. But it is the built-over station. If you look on the bottom to the left, there is a small entrance for the train users. You have to know where to go. This is not obvious.
Kurt, can I ask you to draw to a conclusion now, please? Could I ask you to draw to a conclusion, please?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yes, the spacing in the city is always very important as well, and we have to combine the trains and the public transport system with all other means. For instance, the bikes, which is concluded here. There is a need for good bike parks. There are special good examples, of course, in Denmark and Netherlands and Switzerland. There is the new system of mini scooters, which is often a problem on pavements in the city, but they should be regarded as an efficient means of transport and should be some way offered to train passengers and bus passengers. And also cars could be, of course, another combination, but preferably taxis or rent-a-car or carpools. So that is actually those practical things that are most important. I can't refrain from just mentioning the new dual mode system, tram-train system, which makes people avoid one change when the tram train starts on the railway outside the city and then goes into the streets. But on the other hand, they are bypassing the station, making little use of the space in the station, but offering space to other persons, of course. So that's an alternative, and it's, of course, a multimodal attitude. So that is the book that I presented a few years ago about multimodal, intermodal stations with all those needed measures to be done. So that's the presentation. So thank you.
Kurt, thank you very much indeed for your and it's super important to understand how the customer perceives the service, the provision of the facility. So what I'd like to do is to bring Philippe back in again and introduce you also to Laurent Papienik, who's the Chief Information Officer Chief Data Officer for SNCF Gare Connexion, who has been having a terrible time in getting a connection with us. Laurent, I'm not sure whether you can hear us. Can you?
Yeah, I can hear you. Do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Okay, so this is going to have to be an ethereal voice from out of nowhere, whilst we all sit here and look very studious, whilst Laurent who's going to give us a couple of minutes of just perspective of what this whole question related, of course, to transforming stations into multimodal hubs means from his perspective. Laurent, the floor is yours for a couple of minutes.
Okay, thank you. I've had a lot of trouble being connected through my country place side in Burgundy, so I'm very sorry. For the moment, wait a minute. So what we are doing in Gare Connexion in France, we are building and operating train stations. We got the luck, I would say, to be not only user of train station, but also builders of train station, because we have our own architecture bureau, which is called AREP, and which is very good. So what we used to do with measuring the traffic and being able to have in real time data flows and data flows about how many people are going through the station. With the data, we do three things. The first things we do, we try to, at least we did a few months ago, we try to make the shops in the train station being aware of how many people will be there and at what time, so that they can prepare their cashier and prepare their people in the stations and give them advice how to absorb the peak of traffic. But this is very well done nowadays by Smart Flows, which has very good tools to perform that with airports. So that's the first point. What we do is we try to increase the revenue of the shops. The second point is that we try to optimize our operations of train station as far as facility management and building the station is concerned. So obviously, if we got plenty of data on how many people are using this floor or these stairs or these lifts, we can size the place, we can size the environment so that the flow will go through with no problem. So on the one side, we use those measurements to size the spaces. On the other side, we can use the data about people's flow in order to improve maintenance. Maintenance is one of our main jobs. We operate hundreds of stairs, electrical stairs, escalators. We operate hundreds of lifts. So knowing how much they are used allows us to target our maintenance in the places where it's the most used or it's the most required to work. So this is the second topic, improving our operations of train station, maintenance. And the third topic, the third area we use data is how can we measure and give information to people concerning data flow so that we can improve onboarding and offboarding the trains. We can inform applications, web applications or smartphone applications, and we can inform the end user where the flow is the most convenient for him. So this third point is a kind of a smart city business, how to inform people about where to go and where to catch some kind of intermodality services such as bikes and and buses and taxis and whatsoever. So all those measurements of flows allows us to improve the business we do with shops, operate at lower cost our train station, and give passengers very useful information in order to make their life easy in train stations.
Zaha, thank you very much. I'm so glad you were able to connect in the end, and thank you very much for giving us that overview of what it is that you are engaged on inside SNCF. And for those who are not aware, the Gare et Connexion subsidiary, shall we call it that, department team inside SNCF is the one that looks after all of the stations, of course, the stations and facilities. Well, one of the things I'd like to turn our attention to now, ladies and gentlemen, is to the answering the questions that may have been put. And I'm delighted that one question has flooded in from a listener or a viewer, I should say, which sort of tends to lean towards something which I was going to ask Filippo actually about all of the projects that he showed us were large stations or of significant size, and whether or not there was anything that is being worked on, as far as you know, for stations which are, shall we say, less significant. And that sort of tends to tie in with the question that you can see there in the Q&A about why the stations should be so huge compared to other buildings. Perhaps you can comment on both of those aspects, Filippo.
Yeah, of course. Well, there are many different stations depending on the side of the world we normally operate. For instance, in China, they tend to have very large stations, retaining the concept of one single roof that is basically covering all the platform, which is pretty much a concept from the 18th century. It really depends whether you want to integrate within the station other facilities like commercial, retail, food and beverage, or even additional program, or whether you want to keep it as the strictest mean of connection between the entrances and the platforms. So I believe, from the architect point of view, I believe that within the space of the station, there's a beautiful opportunity of challenge an emotional space from the point of view of the architecture, and make this space as effective and efficient, but also on the same time as grand as possible. Of course, this has to go together with a number of other considerations in terms of overall energy savings and efficiency of the connection, but also in terms of how this space it is integrated with the city and how effectively we can consider it as a continuation of the urban environment, especially for the TOD and the transit-oriented development.
And in terms of the throughput, the footfall, the flow through those stations, Marie, how does this was something else I was going to touch on as well, so we might as well pick it up now. Is how the design aspect dovetails, shall we say, merges with the flow of people through the station.
Yeah, this is an absolutely key point, which is that besides the size of the station, the main point is really, to our point of view, the fact that the design has to be smart and sized and adapted to the actual flow and obviously the future flow, besides the pandemic situation with lower flows these days, lower traffic, but the future flows of train stations. And if you think about some French examples, Gare Saint-Lazare here in Paris is a rather small station because it's stuck in the middle of the city, as many of the Parisian and actually old cities stations. They can be very small, very constrained, but eventually they have to be thought and adjusted to the different type of flows, the flows of the daily commuters that are just going regionally just around Paris versus the flows of the passengers who are actually traveling for holidays and going further away. And it links to something else that was mentioned by Kurt earlier and again by Laurent, which is about the retail offer. And this question about whether stations are commercial malls or whereas they are just stations and they should just have a couple of retail offers. Well, in Saint-Lazare, for example, again, there has been a proper mall which has been put on the side of the station so that passengers and people coming by can have an amazing shopping experience, while separated from the flows from the station itself, so that it doesn't prevent from an excellent opportunity to see the proper station signage, to access the ticketing, etc. So the 2 points, I believe, in terms of experience, an efficient traveling experience, as well as a nice shopping and improved experience besides traveling, can go together as long as they are thought and designed. So we're back to the architects eventually, in the best way, not to confuse the passenger, but on the contrary, to improve his experience.
And Kurt, from the user's point of view, the user perspective, how do you approach this dichotomy between easy access and the grandeur of the facility?
Well, it's quite important to have the additional service and the option to be able to find some stuff you want to buy or plan for buying today, to do it in the station. It's a good idea, but it should not be a maze for the train user to find the way to the train. It should be clear, nearby, but not in the way. There are many good examples, but there are also many bad examples. So, I mean, the combination can be found.
Back to the designer again then, Kurt.
Yes.
This is not a designer bashing session, however. But everybody has their role to play. And indeed, in that aspect, and this is something I touched on, Marie, a little earlier when you were doing your presentation, just after your presentation. You were talking about the importance of measuring the throughput, the footfall in stations, and how that's used for identifying service patterns for the trains and that sort of thing. Obviously, this current situation, the current pandemic, the COVID situation, has had a huge impact right across, not just in France, but right across the whole of the railway community. How the system that you've got, how is that able to help operators to be able to adapt the service that they provide, and are you already starting? Let me put it another way. The chances are that after the end of this, and it's interesting you mentioned Saint-Lazare, because it is what I call, more or less, apart from Caen and Dieppe, it's a commuter station. There's lots and lots and lots of people coming in from the banlieue and from the suburbs. And one of the things, of course, will be that post-pandemic, people's working patterns may change. We may find that people are working at home 2-3 days a week, maybe only traveling 2-3 days a week, and how that footfall and service pattern is going to change. In fact, we may even see the end of the rush hour, the heure de pointe, and the rush hour, and the peaks and the troughs. How are you addressing that from work you're doing?
The point of the system is to measure. That's the point that you mentioned earlier, which is absolutely key, which is that, again, the operators always feel things, but feeling them, seeing them through cameras is actually not at all the same as having some figures and being able to run some models, to create some insights, and then to take the most informed decision. So we have been working with Gare Connection for years now, and so we know the patterns at Saint-Lazare, for example, that used to feed the station in the morning, in the evening, on the weekends, because it's also a station that goes towards Normandy, which is a place where Parisians go on weekends. So we have all these patterns. Now, during the pandemic, obviously those patterns weren't correct anymore, right? So we've been reflecting the real-time flow, what was just happening, so that the daily operators could amend their decisions according to the different flows, which was obviously lower, as you mentioned, because people were in lockdown at a certain time, and then yes, because there are less going to work, even still now. But still, during this pandemic and during this time, you still have this issue of densities, which happen even if the traffic, the global traffic is lower. You still have some trains that are going, and the platform is short, and it's full, and it still needs to be regulated at that time by the operators. And the third point is about the fact that registering the flows over the pandemic and over the next few weeks and months, when the traffic goes back to basically the new normal, I would say, well, we will again identify those new patterns that will support Gare Connection and probably SNCF in maybe even going up to adjusting the different routes, the time schedule of the trains according to when people actually show up in the station and when they do not show up anymore like they used to do.
I think you're right to maybe we should call it the new different, because I think it will be very different after all of this is finished. But can I bring in Laurent, because assuming you can still hear us, Laurent, what your perception is from in fact the operating end of this particular question.
Well, I would say that the smart flow tool has helped us a lot during the pandemic to restart the train circulation in May, and we used to provide special screens, in fact, direct access to smart flow tool to our operating people that were managing the flow in real time. In fact, in the link Marie gave in her presentation, you will see a very interesting video explaining how we did the COVID restart in May, and maybe there will be other restarts, we don't know. But it was very obvious that the Smart Flow tool was one of the two tools they had. The first one they had is a very regular one. They were watching CCTV of the most crowded train station, which is Gare du Nord, the traffic suburbs of Gare du Nord. And it was one of their big screen in the wall. And the other big screen was the Smart Flow tool that lets them explore every train station of the French network in order to find that there were some kind of peaks of traffic. And in fact, they detected some peaks of traffic due to multiple train arrival at the same time, for instance, or other crowded situation. So for us, it was the very first time we could show to the whole company, the big company, our work, because before we were doing that kind of work for only our people and measuring the stairs, measuring the flow in the station, providing the people that do the embarkment, providing them with data in order to give them some figures on how fast they can bring people in the train or out the train if they wanted to have a fast half turn, as we say. Train is arriving and departing as soon as possible. So that is our view. And now we try to expand the use of this tool to other interesting situations. For instance, as I mentioned, shops, and maybe preventive maintenance will be interesting in such a way. If we can measure people, going from the the underground level to the street level, we can deduct, we can infer the use of the escalator. So if the escalator is very used and very loaded by people, so we can try to provide to have a more dedicated maintenance, more often, more dedicated to special pieces that are solicited by the flow. Well, that's it.
Thank you, Laurent. Kurt, from your point of view, the issue related to you referred to I want to change slightly the sort of the tack, shall we say, a little bit now. You referred in your presentation, Kurt, to people with reduced mobility and the arrangements that are made for them. And maybe there is a link between being able to cater more because for the people who have reduced mobility, they have their passage through a station is going to be slower, possibly more complicated, and how that might link with the kind of things that you've heard Marie talking about, for example, with smart flow, and how we can approach the safety, shall we say, and the reliability of the experience for those people in stations.
I believe there are many opportunities for, of course, invented or produced for the PRM persons, but many of them might also be very useful for all other passengers, like some sort of guiding where to go, where to find different articles or shops or tickets or whatever you look for, some restaurant and before going by train or and you can be also communicating with the system. I mean, new information system can give answers either by artificial intelligence or by some person who guides you. So that is one special form of devices produced for PRM. But most quality measures are actually useful for all passengers. I mean, it's not a special thing for PRMs that the signs should be readable. Everybody needs them. And of course, if the orientation is easy because you can see where to go, there is the entrance to the train, there is the entrance to the square, station square or something. You don't need any signs. But there are many situations where there is really signs, they are necessary. So, and not only for passengers leaving their own station, but a lot of passengers are there for the first time. We should be aware of the situation for persons who have never been there before.
No, because we want them to come back again.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. This is, of course, the thrust behind the idea of the project that we've been running, or proof of concept that we've been running at the UIC in conjunction with colleagues in Canada, about helping to guide people with reduced visibility through the station environment. It's called Digim, and it's something which has actually been very well received. Maybe we can share some information on that a little later on. Can I turn back now to Filippo? Can I just turn back to you as part of and pick up on this whole persons with reduced mobility thrust, and how we can in evolving station design, of course, because we're transforming the station into the multimodal hub of tomorrow, with the railways being the backbone of sustainable mobility, etc. How do you pick up on these in the design concept when you're designing a new facility, in particular with the disability regs as well?
Yeah, that's pretty much the starting point for any design exercise, because clearly all the new stations, they have to connect all the different levels by means of direct ramps or accessible pathways. And therefore, there's a big effort at the beginning of the project to resolve all the possible difference in level in a way that you can have a continuous flow for people with reduced mobility through the building. Whenever this is impossible, in the case, for instance, of the requalification of old structures, then you might make use of technology of elevators, lifts, and the like. But normally, the way you would start a project from scratch is addressing, first of all the difference in level. I mean, we take advantage in that if we have enough space to create an interesting landscape-like sort of articulation of the different heights of the project. It might result in very appealing sort of architectural spaces where you have connections of different ramps and an overall environment that is resembling the natural landscape.
Marie, when it comes to being able to, does the processes that you apply, is it able to differentiate between people who have got natural ability to, in other words, mobility, as opposed to people who have clearly got reduced mobility?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't, because it is GDPR compliant, and so we cannot access some private information. So we can't see that information, but we can separate the passengers into smaller groups of passengers, the passengers that are departing versus the ones that are arriving. Again, the ones that are going to travel versus the ones that are just staying in the station to either kiss or fly, or just go to the restaurant of the station. And we can also, on a network standpoint, so on the full territory standpoint, identify the behaviors in one station of passengers that are commuting because they are going to the suburbs, as you were mentioning earlier in Saint-Lazare, for example, station in Paris, versus the ones that are taking a longer line, that are taking the TGV or whatever, going to the south of France. And those different types of passengers are not going to need the same level and the same level of information, neither at the same time. When Kurt was mentioning in his presentation the fact that passengers have a view of traveling that is from the departing point until the end, and that they are going to take the metro and then the train, and then maybe they are going to go on a plane, then this type of passenger will need some information of what is happening in the station and whether the train is going to be late or not, very differently, at a very different time to prepare their travel, compared to commuters that if they miss the first train, they are anyway going to have another one 5 minutes later or 10 minutes later. And so this passenger is information that is real time, or even better, that is forecasted for the next 30 minutes, the next hour, or maybe even until the end of the day. It's absolutely key. And it can reach the passenger on signage, using signage and digital signage in the station. But the best situation is, of course, when you can touch the passenger earlier, when he's still at home, when he's still planning his trip. And that's something that probably we have a little expertise on, because it's something that airports, who are a large part of our clients, do a lot, because they have these applications on the phones that passenger go to, and they see if the airport, the plane is going to be late, and they can also see if the security at the airport is going to be dense or not, and so how long they are going to need to reach their plane. And it's the type of information that I believe stations should also be able to share with their users and passengers in general.
Thank you for that insight. And go ahead.
What Marie just said about the information is very important and very useful, of course. And also this public use of the station. I mean, not everybody is going by train. They are just passing through, or they are going to the shops or to the to some activities. And the station should be a part of the city. But there are some problems occurring in some areas. For instance, in the Netherlands, there is going to be barriers to all stations, just having them open for persons with their month cards or period cards. So it's sort of excluding the public, and that is a problem, I think, because it's very useful that the station is offering services for persons who are not going immediately. They might be going the next day, planning something, or well. So what to say about that? The barrier thing.
Of course, at the end of the day, Kurt, the railway companies are in effect trying to protect their revenue, because unfortunately, not every person that uses the railway system is as honest as the people, I'm sure, that are involved in this discussion now. And I'm certain that there has to be some element of that in all of this. As the hour approaches towards 6 o'clock, ladies and gentlemen, and that is when we are due to finish. And of course, as anybody like Marie and Laurent know, at 1800, it's the heure de l'apéritif in France. I would just like to touch on the final little topic as part of transforming our hub, and that is this expression which I didn't know before, this F&B, this food and beverage. And thank you, Filippo, for educating me as to what that is. But just very quickly, then, each of you, Laurent as well, please. What is your vision of the kind of sort of food and beverage services that the hub of tomorrow should be offering? Is it lots with a wide variety? Should it be limited to a certain type of limited sort of service in order that this is still a station and not a shopping mall? Or so Laurent, can I start with you? Has Laurent gone? Okay. Ladies first. Marie, off you go.
Well, my point of view is that the experience should be singular in each station. I mean, my point is that the era of finding McDonald's or KFC or whatever huge F&B brands everywhere is over. And what each station, just as what each airport is going to look for, is a singular signature, and offering to his passengers what's the best in their own city, and in a practical way. So it can be a to-go way when the station is very small, and it can be both a to-go and a sit-in opportunity when the station is bigger and the place provides this opportunity to have a good restaurant as well.
Like the Trembleur at the Gare de Lyon.
Exactly. It's an amazing example.
Well,
Filippo.
my view is that certainly, yeah, stations have to be as diversified as possible. Now, what we can learn from the pandemic is that in the future there will be more different centers within the city that are connected efficiently. And people not necessarily will keep working at home, but certainly they will start working close to their home. They will look for lively, exciting places close to where they live, where they can find the excitement and the advantages of the city, but being more close to their homes. Well, I believe stations, I mean, not the stations as the pure functional connection space to the trains, but the overall transit hub might offer this combination of a number of associated programs.
I think you've wrapped it up very nicely, Filippo. If I can, because we're almost out of time, can I just quickly ask Kurt to give us your perspective, but in 10, 15 seconds, no more, because we need to finish.
Well, different groups of train users have different needs, but not every station can have an oyster bar like New York Central Station.
And in a nutshell, we have to finish on New York Central.
Just a word. Sorry, I'm back.
Laurent, okay, yes.
Yeah, just a word, and it will be very short. Our goal at Gary Connection is to build train stations that are singular. So Marie mentioned the word singular. I'm sure it's because she wanted to give me a hook. We want passengers to have a singular experience. I mean, memorable, something they remember. It's unique. Singular experience. We want to have train stations that are efficient, green, and power-wise, and all that. And we want to have train stations that are convenient and that are modern. And those four adjectives can qualify, I mean, more than the food and beverage experience, but the whole experience in the French train stations.
Well, I think we could, Laurent, thank you very much. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I think we could go on all night talking about this. And it's been a very, very interesting and indeed enlightening experience. And I'd like to thank all four of you. I'm so glad you were able to get back to us, Laurent, for this last little bit. So, Marie, thank you very much for even thinking about this session and helping to put it on, and to Filippo for your insight, and to Kurt, of course, because it would be wrong to have had this discussion without the customer involved in this. And I think, Kurt, that was a very helpful insight as well. And to the wider audience, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for staying with us right to the bitter end of this day one. Tomorrow, another day. So I hope you will come back refreshed and rejoicing in the fact that we will be talking a little bit about sustainable mobility, but continuing the theme on digital innovation as well. And that all starts at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning on this same channel. So without any further ado, thank you to the speakers. Thank you to the audience. Good night and see you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you.
Thanks.